The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here today for a webinar on SOLIDWORKS ECAD Solutions, a closer look at piping and instrumentation, hydraulics, and pneumatics. For those of you who, we have a lot of people on the call today, but for those of you who are new to GoToWebinar or just want a refresher, we do recommend viewing this in full screen. So on your dashboard, there's a maximize button to put it in full screen, as well as we definitely recommend and encourage you to ask questions. It helps us get better and helps us to figure out what you out there are looking for as far as information goes. And there's going to be a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions that have been thrown out there. But if we do not get to your question today, we do record all the questions and we will reach out to you personally with an answer to your question. So again, please enter a couple questions if you desire. My name is JP Manuel. I'm an industry process consultant for Dassault Systems SOLIDWORKS, and I am based in New England. I cover North America. I'm also joined by Thomas Smith. He is my counterpart out on the West Coast. He's out of the greater Denver area. And the two of us together, we are the electrical team at Dassault Systems SOLIDWORKS. If you're unfamiliar with our portfolio with SOLIDWORKS, most folks on the call probably already know about the 3D tool, one of the world-class tool that we have there. We also are joined with the electrical design, the simulations, collaboration. So there's a lot of different tools that you can take advantage of and help to collaborate and communicate more successfully with your team or teams, as I should say. A lot of companies have multiple teams with that. So take a look at our portfolio if you desire. So the typical design process that we see, not just with electrical design, but with P&ID and with hydraulic and pneumatic schematics, is people are just using boxes, drawing lines, adding text boxes to figure out, what is that box for. And then after the fact, they're going in and they're documenting everything. And they're using stuff, they're using tools such as Excel outside of their main schematic capture tool. And from there, they have to go back in and they have to audit everything and second check and make sure all that information is correct. And if there's a change, well, that cycle continues and you have to make that change. Then you have to go back and check your schematic, not your schematic, your spreadsheet, and re-audit it and make sure everything. I call it the vicious cycle. You almost never end. You're always doing the same cycle over and over again. But with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, what that allows you to do is it allows you to take that reporting aspect and that auditing aspect and bring it up front while you're doing your design. So as you're drawing out your symbols and you're drawing out all your piping and even wires, because it is called SOLIDWORKS Electrical, you start to build that bill of materials on the back end. I use the term garbage in, garbage out. If you've ever heard me give a presentation before, I use that term a lot. I think it's the most relevant version of it. The more information you put in now, the less time you're going to be sitting in front of Excel making sure you ordered all the right parts later on. The key factor, what the hub of SOLIDWORKS Electrical really is the manufacturer parts library. It allows all the users to communicate and collaborate a lot more effectively. Take this keyed connector here, for example. We have its metadata sheet, its manufacturer parts sheet in front of us. But more than just the spec information, we also have individual symbols that are correlated directly to that part. So now instead of me having to go and search for a symbol model every time, if it's associated directly to the manufacturer part, I simply say insert, and now it pulls in whatever is in that specific field that we see here. Speaking of symbols and parts, we have this basic power supply. I didn't have time to actually change this to a hydraulic symbol or anything like that, but we get the idea with a symbol. There's a lot of different pieces of information within every single one of our symbols. And now that information can be pushed out, as we said before, into our bill of materials, to from lists and so on and so forth, rather than trying to type everything out. Now, the guy who created this accidentally fat-fingered something, for lack of a better term. He had a typo. Now, this is just a PowerPoint slide, and there's a typo on it. I can very easily go in and fix that. But if you had created this separate from the actual tool in something like Excel and printed it out and sent it out to the field, and then 3 months from now found that error, how much pain would that actually cause? Probably something. It may be a little bit, but something would happen. So by, again, having and pulling all that information from the schematic directly, you would avoid issues such as this. And two-way communications between the electrical side, the schematic side is what I like to call it, and our 3D side. When I add a symbol to the electrical side, I'm adding a component to my electrical tree, my component tree. By adding that component, it's automatically adding that to my 3D side, which allows me to insert that manufacturer part, that component, in this case P2, the model, right to my assembly. And it's both ways. It's not just from electrical to mechanical. Me as the mechanical engineer, I would want to go in and I'm going to add a new pump. I can go in and find that pump in my manufacturer parts library. It creates a new component, and now on the electrical side, I would see that this new pump appears. And we're going to go through this, and we're going to show this part of it. So again, SOLIDWORKS Electrical, that's the name, right? I personally like to call it SOLIDWORKS Schematics. We all know it can do schematics, and it's pretty good at schematics. But again, you can also use it for pneumatics, hydraulics, and process and instrumentation diagrams. There's one thing about it. You just have to press the I believe button, because there's a couple instances in here that we're going to talk about where it's referring to electrical, but in reality, we all know that we're dealing with pipes or fittings and stuff like that. So what are we expecting to see here today? What we're going to talk about is our schematic. We're going to go through our schematic. We're going to add some information to our schematic. We're going to take a look at our symbols. We're then going to correlate that information back over to the mechanical side, and we're going to add that pump, in this case, like I showed before, to our assembly. From here, we're going to create a pipe. We're going to be using the premium tool with piping and routing to create this little pipe section here. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and take a look at all the different types of reports, our bill of materials, our piping information, and even a piping diagram as we see on the right-hand side. So I am now over in SOLIDWORKS. Core SOLIDWORKS, something most of you are probably familiar with. And when I first open up my project, and this is the window that I would see when I have a collaborative project between electrical and the mechanical space. This is our projects manager. This is where any project that has any type of collaboration between them should be controlled from. And you see here in this first instance, that first project that I have, it's in blue. It lets me know that I have the project open. So we can come in over here. I already have it open. I just wanted to show that window. And we see on the right-hand side, our document tree. These are all the documents that I have in my project. Now, this is totally customizable. However you want to set this up. In this case here, I have 2 books, and I have different folders within the books, and I have different sheets within each one of those folders. And there's a lot of different information in here. For example, on the mechanical side, I can open up one of these drawings and just view what's going on over on the electrical side. Now, I can't edit this drawing, but I can definitely go in and at least view, and I can get a better understanding of where the electrical engineer's mind is going with the design altogether if I need to. Another really neat tool is I can actually embed spec sheets right into my project. So when I need a pump, an electro, or some sort of valve, an electromechanical valve, and both sides of the cubicle, both sides of the room need information from that spec sheet, well, I can embed that spec sheet right in the project, and that way everybody has access to it, rather than me having it on my local computer and now I have to share it 37 times to everybody else on my team. Not that that's ever happened to me before. So again, this is the assembly we'll be working with. I know it's small, but I get the point across on how to use the tools and use them proficiently. So let's go ahead and we're going to open up a new instance of SOLIDWORKS Electrical. And the first thing we get is that project manager again. This time it's in red. It lets me know that there's another user. In this case, it's me. I have a standalone setup, but if I was in a network situation where I have multiple users, I would see that somebody else is working on that particular project. It doesn't stop me from opening it, and I can go ahead and view that same document tree that we just saw over on the mechanical side. We can see that I also have the model open. So it even gives me a description of let me know, or graphical representation by changing the color to let me see what other files are already open, what sheets are open, or what, in this case, the assemblies are open. So let's go ahead and we're gonna open up our main schematic. And we see here, I need to be able to connect my heat exchanger to my storage tank. And we're gonna add a pump in between here. So I could very well, just like a lot of other tools and just like every engineer's favorite tool, keyboard shortcut is Control-C, Control-V, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna go through and we're gonna look at some of the information we have in our tool, because that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to learn about a little bit more about what this tool has to offer. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert a symbol. And in this case here, the last symbol that I chose actually was the pump, but pretend like it wasn't, we're gonna go in and take a look at some of the different symbols that we have available. So in the case of, because this is a more geared towards hydraulic, pneumatics, and P&ID, just to show you a lot of the different symbols that we have defaulted, they're default symbols that are available within the software. These are all standard symbols that you would find in any type of P&ID, or calculator symbol, love that one. But we also have a lot of pneumatic and hydraulic symbols as well, and all the different types of tanks. Now, these are all default symbols. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't. Nothing says you have to use these. But what I do recommend, if you don't like to use these, I would take one of these and I would copy it and make the changes necessary and leave the original alone. But you're building on that library and you're growing your team's library as necessary. So let's go in. I'm going to add that pump. And the first thing that happens is we see that it's going to try to assign a number to this, a root and a number. It's P3. I don't want it to be P3 because I only have one pump in my schematic. We have P1 down here. Well, it's because I already have a P2 within my project. I've already assigned a P2 because in my line diagram, as we see here, I have a line diagram drawing. I've already assigned it a P2 to that drawing. So again, I can have multiple symbols, multiple pieces of information throughout my project, all associated to the same component. If you're unfamiliar with a line diagram is more of just a high-level block diagram, high-level overview drawing. That's the way I like to describe it. There is a lot of features you can use and utilize with a line diagram drawing. I've seen a lot of folks use a line diagram for P&ID as well. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to associate this new pump symbol to P2, just like that. So let's go ahead and add some more information. Now, this is one of those I believe moments. I'm going to go ahead and draw a wire, but I don't want to add a wire. I'm actually going to go ahead and just show you real quick. This is where all of our information about our wires and potentially our piping, hoses, any of that type of information can be stored. In this case here, I've created a group with just a return line and a working line right now for my piping, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. This is totally customizable as well. We can add any type of information in here, and there's a lot of different metadata built into every single one of these that if there's specific material information or specific information about the type of hose or pipe that you are using, you can most certainly add that. There is a customized feature where you can add additional fields as necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and use this working line, and we'll drop that in. I'm also going to go ahead and update my black box so that it recognizes the connection, just like that. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a valve. Now again, I could very well come in and I can select this one and Control-C, Control-V. Everybody loves that one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my symbols palette, and I've already dropped this one as a favorite. So I could go in and I can either search for it if I wanted to, and any type of valve that I have in my project, I can go through and search, as we see here. Or, as I just said, We can use our favorite and just drag and drop that in. In this case now, what we're going to do is I'm going to leave it as V8, and I'm going to go ahead and add manufacturer part information to it. So on this screen here, this is where I would add information about what this valve is being used for. And then the next tab is what we're going to use and what part we're going to call out and say what information about that, what manufacturer part we're going to use for this symbol. Just like that, I now have a new valve and a new pump in my schematic. All right, so moving on, we've done that on the electrical side. Let's go take a look and see what happened on the mechanical side. So we have our assembly. Nothing has really changed just yet, but we can come over into our component tree and we can see that now I have a V8 and P2 is available for me to add to my project. So because I've already added to my electrical schematic and it already has manufacturer part information associated to it, all I need to do is simply right click and insert. Here comes my pump, and I've got it set up right now using SmartMates, and it'll snap right into place. Now there is another feature in here that some folks like to use. I like to use it a lot too, where maybe the mechanical engineer has already gone through and added and mated everything up and put everything exactly where it needs to be. There is a feature called Associate, where I can just simply come in, select the part that I want, hit enter, and it now makes that association so that when I go to route anything later on, it knows that that is the part I'm talking about. So you have two options when it comes to actually associating your 3D models to the electrical component tree. All right, so now that we've added our pump, let's go ahead and we're going to route this little section of pipe here, this little corner valve. Corner pipe with a valve in it. So using piping features, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start a route. I'm going to go ahead and allow it to use 2-inch pipe, schedule 40. There's a lot of different basic configurations that we can use. And I'm going to remove these real quick so we get a good drawing later on. These little segments here. And now I'm also going to go ahead and add to route. Stretch these out a little bit, and then I'm going to use this nifty little feature here and merge those points together, and I've got my little pipe path here. So let's take this a step further, and we're going to go ahead and add our valve to this path. Now I'm still in the subassembly of this pipe. Find this valve. Now I could add it anywhere along this path. Obviously this side doesn't really make a lot of sense. I probably want to add it over here. I can always add some dimensioning to it as necessary so that we get the same for every single pipe that we get. Let your OCD sink in on that one for a little bit. And now we have our small pipe section here. The nice thing with this is that now with that valve and the information that was already created in the schematic, everything's linked together. I can now create a pipe drawing. Use a D-size sheet. And just like that, I now have a better drawing, and now I'm in drawing tools, SOLIDWORKS drawing tools, where I have a lot more power to be able to add different views, maybe a section view, things like that about this. I also get a table here that shows a lot of the information about this particular pipe section. And now I can take this information and I can add it to my electrical project, which I've already done here. I've already got a version of this built into my electrical project, so everybody on the team, both electrical and mechanical, can see the information at hand. All right. So now that I'm on the electrical, on the mechanical side, there's a few more things I need to do while I'm over here. I'm going to take the role of the mechanical engineer, and I'm going to go ahead and start adding some more pipes and another valve in here. We have this other connection that I need to hook up. So again, what I'm going to simply do is go ahead, start the route, use the same type of 2-inch pipe. Drag that all the way up. We're going to do the same thing over here. All right. Now, instead of using that merged feature, I'm going to go ahead and use auto route. Now it auto routed and it put it through the wall. So just using a quick, oh, no more auto route. I can just drag this up and I can put it up on the pipe hanger. And again, using dimensioning tools, I can get this perfectly lined, but for this purpose, we're pretty close to exactly where we want it to be. Obviously, dimensioning is probably the right way to go in this, but I don't want to spend time having you guys watch me how to dimension this thing for 10 minutes. So from here, now let's go ahead and we want to add, while we're still in the subassembly for this pipe, I want to add a new valve, but I didn't add a valve to my schematic yet. So from this side, over on the mechanical side, I'm going to go ahead and add a new component, and I'm going to call out a new valve. And automatically gives me the next available number, V9, and I'm going to go ahead and find that same valve type that we had before. We see that a new component has been added to our project. Again, the metadata in that for this particular component, that manufacturer part, also contains the 3D model information. So it's pointing directly to somewhere on your library or in your PDM vault on where that particular solid part is or assembly is. And now I can come in. Oh, 1 second. Looks like my mouse decided to try to die on me here for a second. We can go in and we can insert. And we'll drag this over. And we'll drop it right there. Great. Okay, so now that our assembly is done, let's go back over into the electrical side and see what we have over there. So we can go ahead and we have our new component. Open up these. Now we have our component tree, the same component tree here, and we have that new V9 here. But notice that there's no symbol. We don't have a drop down. We can't expand the tree yet on this because we don't have a symbol associated in our project because we've only added to the mechanical side. Very simply, I'm going to go in, insert symbol, and I'll drop that in right about here, just like that. I'll go ahead and draw out my wire. I can actually connect it right to there. And then I can take this, drop it right onto place. The nice thing with that is if I move this out of the way, the pipe fixes itself, as we see here. All right. Give me 1 second and see why my mouse decided to stop working. I was just using my laptop pad for that. All right. So now that we've added our pipe in here, our additional valve, let's go ahead and finish off our schematic. There's a few additional pieces of information here we want to fix and finish off. So the first thing we notice, I've got a couple origin destination arrows here. This top one here kind of just goes off into space. Just doesn't go anywhere, just spilling fluid out in the middle of nowhere. Sorry, cat joke. So what I need to do is simply use an insertion tool. And I'm going to point my pipe to my other boiler, and just like that, I now have schematic or a new origin destination arrow. If I double click on that, I now have hyperlinks between the two, and it's giving me page information. There's a lot of other information that I could have here if I desire. But the more important thing is that when I export this to a PDF, these are also hyperlinked in the PDF. So the days of sitting there with a giant 11 by 17 book are unnecessary anymore, because now I can hand somebody a PDF or a smart tablet with a PDF on it, and they can simply go through and walk around with that. It's a lot lighter too than that old big book that everybody had to carry around. So another thing we can do here is we can go ahead and add our wire numbers, or in this case, our piping numbering system. So I'm going to go ahead and process anything that hasn't received a number yet. And the numbering scheme for this actually comes from inside of the wire properties. There is information here that I can figure out and formulate. So if I want to set up a specific piping numbering system based off of my return lines, or based off of whatever type of whatever is being used, whatever's flowing down that pipe, right? We can set up a formula for that as necessary. Or you can just keep it as is, and everything will just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as necessary. Additionally, I also have the ability to add labels. We see here, let's go ahead and insert a label. And now we get a little bit more additional information about that particular segment between the pipe and the valve here. So I've created this whole schematic. It's pretty basic, right? But it's a great starting point for the future on expanding and making this a lot more intelligent, a lot more detailed. So what I can do is I can actually come in and I can highlight sections of this. Maybe everything in the mechanical room is something that we're going to use over again in another project or another section of this project, because the schematic is the same. Maybe the parts might change, but overall the graphic information and the metadata in here is going to be the same. I can simply take that and I can drag it over into what we call our macros palette and reuse this information at a later date. Now, again, it's like a copy paste, but it's way more than a copy paste, because I'm capturing all the metadata built into this. So when I want to reuse this again, all I need to do is simply drag and drop this in. And by dragging and dropping this in, I'm now adding a new tank, 5 new valves, another pump, and all these sections of pipe built into this project here. So my component tree is going to gain a whole new list of parts that I didn't have to do before. I don't have to sit there again and draw a pipe, draw a valve, add information, draw another valve, add information. So I probably just saved myself a good maybe half an hour of drawing all this information out. So there are other ways to maybe keep it as the same mark, or in this case, create new. So it's going to give me all new components, as I said before. That is probably one of my favorite features about this software, is being able to reuse the information that we see here. So taking this a step further now, we've got our schematic. It's just about done. What about the information? We talked about the metadata and not having to sit in front of Excel for a week because we forgot to order the right fitting for whatever it is we're working on. Well, we have the ability to generate some reports. In this case here, we're going to go ahead and draw our capture our pipes. We do have the ability to export this information to Excel, text file, or an XML if you are using any type of external tool where you need to push this information into any type of peripheral software. There is actually a feature that you can actually, and I'll bring it up in a minute, you can export information out, edit it in Excel, and then import that information back in and push it to certain symbols in your software if needed. I know a few customers that are utilizing certain analysis tools outside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical that they need to do this, and they type that information into their Excel spreadsheet and push it back so that it shows up on their schematic. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and generate my drawings, my reports, I should say, even though we call them drawings, and I'm going to let the software do everything for me in this case. And now at this point, it's capturing everything that I've done in my schematic. It's creating my list of pipes. It's creating my reports, my bill of materials. So we see our main bill of materials is here. Quick little view, I have a couple electrical parts in here as well that I added just to show the difference between some of the different types of parts. And then we also have our list of pipes in here as well. There's a lot more information that I could potentially add to this. There's a lot more information that I could add to this. Again, this is just a very generic view of what the potential is, but there's, and Thomas can iterate too if he's he's probably just listening right now, but there's a lot of different things and information metadata fields that you can add to this particular report to make it and tailor it to exactly what you want and your team needs to get the job done.
Correct. Yeah, I completely agree, JP. On the reporting side, given that we're the full SQL-driven database, behind this application, it does allow for heavy customization in the output of our reports.
Thanks, Thomas. So recap. I know I just showed and I just shoved a lot of information at you guys, folks out there. But what we did is we worked with our schematic, we added a new pump, we added a new valve. We then took that information and correlated it back over to the 3D side. And then by having that information from the electrical schematic and pushing that over to the mechanical side, we were then able to start doing our our piping routes and add additional things such as our valves. And then from there, we went ahead and we had our reports, including our pipe document, a piping drawing, as well as the bill of materials and even a piping list. So the overall benefits of this, I can't stress this enough. You probably heard me say it, and you're probably sick of hearing me say it now, is increasing the communication collaboration between the electrical and mechanical design teams. I know that I probably should have edited that and included the hydraulic and pneumatic guy or the P&ID team as well, but for the most part, it resonates the same. Increasing your productivity and your time to market, they go hand in hand. Again, there's no more sitting behind the phone or instant message or Skype to go back and forth between everybody. And it allows you to reduce a lot of manufacturing defects and scrap. So going forward with your designs, obviously I talked about the default symbols that we have, but there's a lot of other information out there for you to take advantage of, including the electrical content portal, where there's not just electrical information up there. There's, I can't remember off the top of my head how many millions of parts there are inside of what we call the ECP, the electrical content portal. There, you can go here and you can download certain libraries of specific types of metadata for all the different types of parts out there on the market. If you can't find it there, you probably can find it on 3D Content Central. Nobody wants to go and reinvent a piece of equipment that's already been modeled up. So go ahead and check out 3D Content Central to find those models. And then finally, mysolidworks.com, where myself, Thomas, and quite a few other people that we have here are working on building a really nice library of electrical videos that include P&ID, setting up an actual P&ID diagram, which is essentially a schematic, right? It's not that much different than a standard schematic that we probably have seen. But setting all this information up, little videos that you can watch while you're at work. You're stuck in a spot where you can't figure out how to edit something. That's what these videos are designed to do. Watch a 5-minute video and get right back to work and get done what you need to do. With that, it goes without saying that with all this information that we have, electrical, pneumatic, hydraulics, all the mechanical side, we can include all that information inside of PDM. And then who can I share my data with? Who am I sharing all this information with? I just created, all I did in this webinar was add a symbol, add a pump, and add a valve, or 2 valves, I should say, and a couple pipes. But in reality, who else can I share that information with? Yeah, it's great and it's pretty pictures, but who is that really helping? We got to think about everybody outside of just the engineering team, the shop floor, the logistics team. Who's going to order these parts for you? Maybe you do it yourself, but Maybe you have a whole team that you have to pass this information off to. So by creating that bill of materials inside of the tool, now you just export it as a spreadsheet and send it on its merry way. And hopefully, if you're like at McMaster or Newark or something, you get it in like 2 or 3 days. So for every one of those parts of your team or your company that you work with, there's a tool for almost everybody. And again, these are all the tools that we have to offer. Thomas, we have a few minutes for some questions if anybody has any questions, and I assume there's probably a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We've had questions rolling in throughout your presentation. Some of those I have answered directly, and I'll just kind of field the ones that we have coming in standing open now. So to start, I had a question coming in regarding the creation of custom data, whether that's custom parts or symbol stuff. What tools do we have available for that? For getting custom data.
So two things. One, if you already have symbols and you want to import them in, we can import them in. There's I call it a little WYSIWYG, but essentially there's an import wizard that you can import your symbol in. Depending on what tool it is coming from, you'd still have to probably come in and edit it just a little bit and make sure that the attributes map up and everything correctly. But for the most part, that is handled within the wizard to map that information correctly. Additionally, if you want to start from scratch and you don't have any symbols, I do recommend taking one of our existing symbols within the library, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them, taking one that you think is close to what you want it to be, and then copying that and editing that copy and making it exactly what you want. Hopefully that was a good enough answer.
Yep, nope, that was good. Thank you for the explanation, JP. The questions are coming in fairly quickly. I'm trying to keep up. So here's a question as far as the reporting capabilities. For one, I'll start off with the question reads, can we export the reports as Excel files? And I'll just take this one, the easy one. And yes, we can export as XLS, a text file, and a CSV. So those are output types for the reporting. And then a second question with that from the same user was in regards to our creating of custom SQL queries, and is asking if we have a database map. And the answer is yes. We do have a well-documented database map that shows how all the tables are related to each other, and that can definitely be beneficial when writing custom queries. So we do have that available.
Great. I'm going to take that next one there, Thomas, I see in the list. The significance of the color change in the pipe from purple to yellow. So the main thing is that when I selected and did my route originally in that dialog, which you didn't see, was I had the ability to choose whether or not I wanted that to be a bent pipe or an elbow that has been added in place. So anytime there was yellow, it was usually a segment that was added as almost like a fitting, right? So those are fittings. Now, if I had it set to bend, that whole section would have just been purple rather than that purple yellow look.
Okay, great. Thank you for jumping in on that one. I had another one I was getting ready to ask you, is in regards to the ability to combine the mechanical and electrical information on a schematic. The question is it normal, or have we seen the ability to combine electrical and mechanical information on a schematic? And
I would absolutely. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please. Sorry.
No, for as far as on the schematic goes, if it's some sort of electromechanical valve, for example, nothing says that you can't have. So inside of each manufacturer part, let me pull it up. I'll show you. So inside of each manufacturer part, let me find a good one here. I'm just going to grab a connector for now. You have circuits and terminals. Now again, does a pipe fitting have a circuit or terminal? Not really, but that's what we call it in this because it's an electrical tool, correct? So in this case here, I have one circuit, and this is my electrical circuit, but nothing says I can't add a second one, and I can make that one my mechanical fittings. So in the case of that pump, I would have one be for the cable and the wires coming out, and maybe two because there's an in and out for the piping information on there. So I can have several different terminal circuits within that, and I can have multiple instances of that circuit, terminals within that circuit. Hopefully that makes sense. So yes,
Okay.
the answer is yes, you can within a symbol define multiple, including the electrical and mechanical aspects of that component, whatever it may be.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I had a question somebody was asking in regards to kind of some clarification around the packages where we might have SOLIDWORKS premium routing, and then, you know, what's the difference between electrical 3D and how are all those intertwined?
So piping, this electrical piping and tubing come with premium. They come with SOLIDWORKS premium, manual tubing, manual piping, all that stuff comes with that. Now, the electrical 3D add-in, which is this additional tab, that is the add-in for SOLIDWORKS Electrical. So in order to be able to communicate between the two sides, this tab, you need to have this, the ability to have this tab, which includes being able to see your documents, seeing your component tree, and being able to route things automatically. Your wires and your hoses. A lot of people use this for hosing, being able to route big, thick, you know, hydraulic hoses if necessary. Hopefully that makes that's the technical version. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. How many components would you say already, you know, come out of the box versus, you know, what is, you know, would have to be built themselves? And you know, we ship with several thousand components, so out of the box, but really, as JP mentioned, we have that electrical content portal is where we store, you know, a significant amount more. That allows you to bring down into your environment really what's critical to your business. So we don't overwhelm the initial download, but we have several, you know, as JP, hundreds of millions of parts up there with varying level of data. Some of those have the manufacturer's information, part information. Others will have symbols and 2D layout information. So there's a lot. It's hard to range, you know, what each customer might, you know, need for their, you know, out of the box needs. But again, with that content portal, it makes it pretty easy to gain access to new information. So it's really hard to say as far as a percentage of what you know, you might have to create on your own. There will be some level of customization that happens for every company, but again, it varies dramatically. So we have a lot of stuff available on the content portal that can help. All right, let me continue to filter if you see one. So I think you just alluded to this, electrical included in any SOLIDWORKS package, and you would have to have, JP clarified that for the connection into our schematic tool, you have to have electrical 3D, but there is an electrical routing as part of SOLIDWORKS, but no connection to the schematic database. What version? All right.
So there's one in here. Can you link a 3D model to PDM to the electrical parts library? Yes, you can. So if you can actually set up your library to actually link directly to. So these are the paths that you're looking for. These are the paths that you would point to where your projects are, so you can store your projects in PDM. Your application information, I would leave wherever you want to install it. And then your 3D models, this is where you would store that information. So in the case of storing all of your parts and your assemblies within the vault, or whatever vault it may be, this is the path you would want to point to. you would put that path into this.
All right, perfect.
There's a lot of questions. Sorry, Barry. I'm trying to read them as fast as I can here. There's so many coming in.
And yep. And so obviously we had some questions about some video data sets around this type of topics for additional resources. JP mentioned too, we got the My SolidWorks location where there is several tutorials and videos over the varying topics, more technical deep dives as well. Okay, what about, so it says routing is based on Excel design tables. What is the bridge to the electrical database? So if I'm understanding this correctly, what happens when we integrate into electrical is we tie into the SQL database that is driven within that environment. And so we are feeding, once we're tied into the electrical, the information as far as the connection points and things are being fed from the schematic all through the SQL database connection. Now, JP, what is your take on that question?
Exactly that.
Okay, so yeah, the connection is then through the SQL connection between the two applications.
What about ducting, stairs, and floors? It depends on what you need to do with the ducting, stairs, and floors. Mark Andre, I calling you specifically. I'll reach out to you and try to help answer that question. Maybe we can jump on a call and explain that a little bit better. But I think overall, one thing I didn't really show, which I can real quick, is we see here I do have an electrical panel, right? So in order to route things up through under stairs or along the side of the stairs or in a ducting or in this case here I have my pipe hangers, we have what's called an EW path or an electrical path that I want to follow. This is mainly for routing electrical wires or hoses that we want a specific path for. You can see that I have these yellow lines that have appeared. And these yellow lines are guidelines that I tell the software where I want the wire to go, because if I don't, or the hose to go, because if I don't have those, the hose is just going to route where it wants to go. It's going to, you told me to route. Okay, great. It's going to route. But I don't want it to just go through the wall. I want it to go through this little hole in the wall, through my conduit, and go to the pump. So setting that up is one of the aspects of the routing side of things.
All right, perfect. I had a question here. Can you use electrical separately without a 3D model as a 2D schematic tool? The answer is yes. SolidWorks Electrical in its own is a standalone product that itself has no need to be associated with 3D. The 3D is just some, additional benefits going that direction, but is a fully functioning 2D schematic tool by its own. Let's see. It's so.
We'll take
go
one
ahead.
or two more here. We'll take one or two more here.
All right.
Let's see. Sorry, they're still coming in, and it's like, trying to keep up with it's moving so fast.
All right, we had a question, and I'm going to go from memory before I find it again. It was asking about the linking to the routing manager between electrical and mechanical. So you already have a mechanical library built through the routing library manager in SolidWorks. What is the means of connecting to an existing library with electrical, or does that have to be done part by part within the database? So go ahead, JPL.
So on the mechanical side, if you have models already, each model would have what we call electrical. I'm using you can't see me, but I'm using my air quotes here, putting my rabbit ears up in my hands. Each part needs to be electrically intelligent. So what that means is I need to let the software know exactly where I want that wire to route to. So on the schematic side, let me pull up my drawing here. On the schematic side, I have connection points. These dots are my connection points. So it knows that when I'm routing to the heat exchanger tank, pins 1 and 2 here, it knows to go, this pipe is going to route from here, or a wire or hose, whatever it may be, is going to route from point A to point B. On the mechanical side, it doesn't know where point 1 is. So you have to tell the software where point 1 is. And that's where you make the parts electrically intelligent inside of the model. Those connection points, C points that you might see in the routing library manager are built into each as features into the feature tree of that part. So once you put them in, you never have to touch them again. They're saved to the part. So that manufacturer part, if you have this very specific manufacturer part, you won't ever have to touch them, which is nice. As far as the mechanical information on the electrical side, it depends on how you have that. Right now, you have the ability to import that information. You do have the ability to import DWGs. We talked about importing symbols earlier. You can also import data from something like Excel, right? So if you have a parts library that you want to import, again, it's a wizard that we would run through, and you essentially map out and tell the software, this is my manufacturer parts part number column. This one here is the actual manufacturer part name, so on and so forth. So you would run through this wizard here to add that information to your library. Hopefully that made sense.
Yep. No, that was good. Thank you, JP. And I think here, lastly, I just want to clarify this. I had a question come in saying, do you need to have SOLIDWORKS PDM in order to link assemblies to schematics? And the answer is no. PDM is not required between the linking. It is SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D that allows for the integration of mechanical and electrical. So it can be done without PDM.
Yeah, this window here shows that I have several locations built into my electrical project. Each one of those locations can correlate directly to an assembly, as we see here at the top level, or sub-assemblies within that as well.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be in PDM, as you said, Thomas.
Yep. Okay. Well, perfect. Well, you know, as JP said, and I've stated, we have several questions still remaining. For those questions that we did not get to answer directly within the webinar, we will follow up with you separately. So
additionally, for everybody, I always get emails about this later on, is we are recording this. So you will get a recording of this webinar at the end tomorrow. It's usually 24 hours from the start of the webinar. So at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, you should be receiving an additional email saying thank you for coming. And there should be a link in that email that says, here's the recording. So if you don't get that, my name's on the admin for that email. So I'll get 100 emails tomorrow saying I didn't have it. So anyway, with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Christine, on the back end here for helping me. And thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Great job, JP. Thank you.